Have you ever met someone who at the very beginning seemed absolutely amazing, incredibly attentive, intense, passionate, and almost entirely perfect? This was someone who told you that you were completely different from everyone else they had ever known, who started talking about a long-term future together in the very first week, and who appeared to be so secure, confident, and truly admirable. But then, slowly but surely, they began to change, and they started constantly criticizing the clothes you wear, the friends you keep, the specific way that you speak, and even your own family. You started apologizing even without knowing exactly what for. Or maybe you work with someone who always needs to be the center of attention. If someone else gets a compliment, their mood changes. If they're contradicted, it turns into an attack. But in front of others, they're charming. Have you ever experienced this? Maybe you called it pride. Perhaps you might have simply called it a case of an overly inflated ego. Perhaps you have previously referred to it simply as having a very strong personality. However, today we are going to dive deep and talk about the complexities of narcissistic personality disorder. I am Luis Sansão, a professional psychoanalyst, and this is yet another insightful episode of our ongoing series titled Psychic Frequency. We will explore the various traits and behaviors associated with this condition to help you understand it much better. If you want to understand the emotional backstage of relationships, learn to identify invisible manipulations, and strengthen your emotional autonomy, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear this, because understanding is the first step to not repeating. And today we're going to dive into NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, in a clear, human, and real-life way. When we talk about narcissism, a lot of people only think about vanity. But Freud took this term from Greek mythology. Narcissus was a young man who despised everyone around him until he saw his reflection in the water and fell in love with himself. He became hypnotized by his own image, unable to love anyone except his own reflection. This story is symbolic because the narcissist does not love the other person. He loves the reflection that the other person gives back to him. Freud said that every human being goes through a phase called primary narcissism. The baby doesn't distinguish between what is himself and what is the world. He cries and someone appears. He feels hungry and someone feeds him. He is the center of the universe. His Majesty the baby, as Freud described. This is normal. The problem begins when this stage does not mature emotionally. Freud called it secondary narcissism when, after frustrations or traumas, the person withdraws the love that should be invested in the world and brings it all back to themselves. Behind the superiority, there is often fragility. Behind arrogance, there is a fear of insignificance. Behind the constant need for applause, there is emptiness. But the ones who pay the price for this are those who have a relationship with this person. Let's bring this closer to real life. The narcissist doesn't start out aggressive. He starts out as someone you need. He makes you feel like you've never been so seen, never been so desired, never been so understood. He opens the car door. He sends flowers, sends chocolates, calls to say he loves you, sends you messages at night. He pays attention to your details, memorizes your stories, makes you believe that you've finally found someone who understands you. But notice, he isn't getting to know you. He's mapping you out. Because everything he discovers, he will use later. In the beginning, he says, "I've never felt this way about anyone." Then he says, "You're overreacting." In the beginning, he says, "You're different from all the others." Then he says, "You're not all that." The change is slow, subtle, almost imperceptible. It's as if he takes away small pieces of your confidence every day, and you start to adapt. You change the way you speak so you don't upset him, avoid certain topics, review your messages before sending them. You start to manage his mood. And here is a fundamental point. The narcissist lives off emotional control. He needs to feel that he influences your internal state. If you're too happy without him, it bothers him. If you achieve something and receive applause, he feels threatened, because the narcissist can't stand not being the center of attention. In Stoic philosophy, there is a central idea. We do not control the external world, only our reactions. But the narcissist does the opposite. He tries to control the external world all the time, especially you. He wants to control your perception. He wants to control how you feel. He wants to control the narrative. Epictetus said that we suffer not because of the facts, but because of the interpretation we give them. The narcissist distorts facts to control your perception. He says that you are too sensitive, that you misunderstood, that you are overreacting. And little by little, you start to doubt your own perception of reality. This is profoundly dangerous, because when you lose confidence in your own perception, you lose autonomy. Marcus Aurelius spoke about inner dignity, about maintaining your integrity, even when someone tries to provoke you. But within a narcissistic relationship, your integrity is attacked all the time. And here comes something very important. A narcissist is not as secure as they seem. He is dependent on admiration. Freud explained that in secondary narcissism, the libido that should circulate in the world returns to the self as a defense mechanism after deep frustrations. In other words, behind the grandiosity there is a wound. But pay attention. Understanding the other person's wound does not mean accepting being hurt. Many people stay because they believe they are helping, that they are healing, that they are being patient. But Stoicism teaches something essential. It is not your responsibility to fix anyone's character. You are responsible for your own choices. The narcissist is inconsistent. One day he is charming, the next distant. One day he makes promises, the next he ignores you. This intermittence creates dependency and is the same psychological mechanism that traps people in gambling. You never know when the next reward will come, and that keeps you trapped. You start living off emotional crumbs. An occasional compliment becomes fuel for weeks of coldness. And when you start to react, he might explode or play the victim. You're attacking me. I do everything for you. You never appreciate anything. Do you see the reversal? He provokes, you react. He acts wounded and you apologize. This corrodes you. Little by little, you no longer know if you're overreacting or if there's really something wrong. And here's an important warning. Not every conflict is narcissism. Not every argument is abuse. Healthy relationships have disagreements, have adjustments, have boundaries. The difference is that in a healthy relationship, there is reciprocity, there is shared responsibility. In a narcissistic bond, there is emotional hierarchy. One is superior, the other has to adapt. And the most dangerous part is that you start to normalize it. That's just how he is. He's just intense. He had a difficult childhood. Yes, maybe he did, but you can't become the place where someone compensates for their wounds. Seneca said that those who associate with the vices of others end up being contaminated by them. If you spend enough time in an environment where your self-esteem is questioned, you start to believe it. And when you realize it, you're no longer the same person. You've lost your lightness, lost your spontaneity, lost your confidence, and maybe the most painful of all, you lost yourself trying to keep someone. And here I want to make something very clear. Understanding narcissism is not about demonizing people. It's about protecting your mental health. Freud said that an excess of self-love prevents object love, the kind of love directed toward another as a subject. And a relationship only exists when two people recognize each other as subjects, when there is space for the other to exist. If the other person needs you to shrink so they can feel big, that's not love, it's a dependence on validation. And Stoicism reminds us of something liberating. You can't control the character of the world, but you can control the limits you accept. Have you noticed how, in the beginning, everything seems magical? It's the enchantment phase, but what seemed like love may just be idealization. And when you stop reflecting the perfect image that person created, the devaluation begins. You start trying to prove your worth, you start making more effort, you start diminishing yourself, and this gradually erodes your self-esteem. Not every relationship is toxic. Healthy relationships do exist. Conflicts are normal. Differences are normal. An abusive relationship begins when the other person doesn't see you as an equal, when there's an emotional hierarchy, when you start to feel smaller just to maintain the bond. Now I want you to think honestly. Have you ever felt emotionally drained? Have you ever doubted your own memory? Have you ever apologized just to keep the peace? Have you ever felt like you were competing within your own relationship? Maybe you were just trying to survive within a narcissistic structure. Clarity is freedom. If this content made sense to you, write in the comments, "I choose clarity." Share it with someone who needs to understand this, and if you want to learn how to identify invisible signs before they destroy your self-esteem, keep following the series.